Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Derek Elliott from Derek.com, and in today's video, which is sponsored by the kind folks at Squarespace, we're going to spend just a couple minutes quickly covering some of the exciting new text features in Blender 3.6. After that, we're going to put our text to the test. Say that 5 times fast. We'll create this animated emboss effect using a few modifiers. We'll then do some quick lighting and animation so that we've got something ready to share. Let's go. All right, so in a blank scene here, just wanted to show you, first of all, obviously how to add text. And to do that, you're gonna press Shift A, and then you can scroll down to the text object right here. Just add that, and then you will have text in your scene. You can press Tab to go into edit mode, and you can type anything you want, like Derek.com, which is my website that needs to be updated very bad. And if we go into the tab over here, this little A, that's the object data properties for this text object. So we have a lot of options in here. First of which is going to be the geometry tab here. This extrude works sort of similar to a solidify modifier, but I've noticed that it does perform a little bit better with font files than with just the solidify modifier. So consider using the extrude option here versus adding a solidify modifier in your normal modifier stack. We have a couple other options here. For one, we can change the bevel, which will sort of round the text, but it'll also expand it a little bit. And then you can also bevel it with an object or with a specific profile. If you're interested in kind of creating something a little bit more unique, then you do have some flexibility over that right here. Just make sure that you have enough segments to do so. So maybe adding in some more resolution right there. So those are some of our basic options. And then moving down, obviously we have control over the font of our object. Now we have 4 fields here. So regular is just going to be what's normally when you typed. And then we have bold, italic, and then bold and italic. Now you'll need to load in your fonts here. So in my case, I have one that's actually just saved on my desktop, but by default, you can probably find your fonts in a folder like this. I wanted to load in the font I have, which, like I mentioned, is on my desktop. It's Roboto. So I'll just load in the regular one here for regular. And then for bold, if I just select the regular, then this will open up to the same folder. And I can select the black one right there. And if you wanted to, you could also select the italic. By default, it changed immediately to the regular one. Just to clear out some of these settings, I'm going to delete this and add in a new text object. And let's just reselect our fonts right here. And let's type in again, Derek.com. So now the really cool thing with Blender 3.6 is that now we can select things with just clicking on them like that, which seems very basic, but you were not able to do that before. So this is really convenient if you're typing like a long paragraph or something. You can select different areas, and then you can use your normal commands like you would in other text editors. Control B to make something bevel, or sorry, to make something bold. And similarly, you could do Control I to make something italic. But since I don't have a font loaded in right there, it's going to default to that regular Blender font. So let's just uncheck the italic right there. So you can also select text and click the options right in here. Now size is just going to control the size of the text. You could also do this in object mode just by scaling, but I would typically prefer to have my scales be 1 if I'm working with modifiers. So using the size here is a good option. Now it doesn't look right now like we can independently control the size within one text object, but maybe that would be something that hopefully we'd get in the future. Now just moving down a few other settings here, we can make this centered, and along the vertical we can also center that. And now if you had other things, tutorial on text, if you had other stuff in here, then you could start to play with the word spacing. You can also play with the character spacing. Again, this is going to affect the whole text object, so you would need to duplicate this if you wanted something separate. And we also have some control over the line spacing here. That's great. And I didn't even know it, but Blender actually has a text box feature too. If we tab into edit mode, I'm just going to go into my top view, which I need to do that in object mode. We can actually add in a text box. So you'll see this yellow line appears if you're in edit mode on this, and that will basically create a text box for you. So we could just paste in sort of whatever text, like this amazing text from ChatGPT. And we could talk about the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. Squarespace is the coolest and most ultra legit way to get a website up and running. This website could be a portfolio of your renders, or it could be a blog. It could even be an online store for digital or physical goods. Squarespace has a bunch of templates that are ready to rock with beautiful designs and useful layouts. Whether it's a shop or portfolio, one of the most important parts of a website is allowing people to have a place to get in touch with you. Drag and drop a contact form onto your site and let those juicy client inquiries start rolling in. Get started today with 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by visiting squarespace.com/Dirk. Control having the text boxes. So right now it's set to overflow, so it's just going to put it all in there, given your sizes and everything that you have set here. But we could change this to scale to fit, where it will fit it all within that box. This would be great if you're making like a plaque or something like that, where you could, sort of have it line up however you want. And we've got options here for how those words actually get arranged, some kind of common, justify, left, center, etc. So this is pretty cool. You can also do truncate, which will cut it off if it's not fitting, but usually you'd want to make sure all your text gets in there. So the scale to fit option is really nice for that. So that's about all I wanted to cover with that. To reset the text box, you'll just have to set these to 0. This X doesn't seem to really do anything right now. Maybe that's something that will get fixed in the future. But yeah, this is really what the great thing about the new Blender is that you can select text. Previously, you would have really just had to do this in a different text editor and then make your changes and then like repaste it every time. But now we can just, simply select things, which is really convenient. And now I want to make sort of a cool little animation. And so I just want to have some subtext here. Animation Premium. Animation Premium. So I actually want this to be a different object. So I'm going to press Ctrl+C to copy that and then delete it. And then let's duplicate this text object and then press Ctrl+V to paste it. And I want to, let's maybe make this bold. We'll do our Ctrl+B, great hotkey to have. We can leave this as, let's just do centered for both of these so they kind of fall around our object origin. And then I'll just scale this down a little bit just until it sort of fits in the middle there. And now I just have two nice text objects. So I wanted to sort of make that leather embossed effect that we saw in the intro. And it's pretty simple to do. I tried it a few different ways, one with using a lot of remeshing, but because the voxel remesher works on sort of a grid, I got a lot of glitchy errors and things like that. So instead I'm going to do it using a shrink wrap method. So let's go ahead and get started with that. With both of these selected, you select one and then shift select the other. If we were to hold Alt and then in our geometry extrude, click and drag, that will change it on 2 objects. So both objects at the same time, which is great. And that actually goes for a lot of things in Blender. If 2 objects have the same data field, if you're holding Alt, it should change them on both objects. So we've extruded that. It's looking good. If your extrudes aren't the same, then make sure your scale is set to 1 right there. So basically, I want to build sort of the positive of the effect here. So besides the text right here, I'm also going to just add in a ground plane because we're going to sort of use this shrink wrap to almost drape like a sheet over top of this whole thing here. So let's scale it up pretty big. This is kind of our tabletop, and this is what is being embossed. So what I need to do now to create that sheet effect is to create the sheet itself. So I'm going to just duplicate this plane, Shift D, bring it up on the Z-axis. I'll scale it down just a little bit so I can have a little bit of distinction between those objects. And then I just want to start subdividing it. So I'm going to right click and subdivide it and then just press Shift R to repeat that action. We're going to need pretty high resolution here because these letters are pretty small. So I might actually repeat that action one more time so we have a really dense mesh. Now we might even want it more dense than that, but beyond that, I will control with the subdivision surface modifier. But the first modifier I want to add is the shrink wrap modifier. So let's click that right there. And then select our text object as the target. Now it's not going to appear here. You're not going to be able to select that. That's because we need to convert these to meshes. So in case we want to go back and change this text or we're doing a different animation or something, let's just duplicate this and move that over there. And then let's select both these and then right click and convert them to a mesh. Now you can see we no longer have the font options here, so we can confirm that these have both been converted to mesh objects. Now let's press Ctrl J to join them together. And now we should be able to select those objects. So let's just select the object right here. And we can see that the shrink wrap on the nearest surface point is working. But I actually just noticed that if we go to project, it gives us an option for an auxiliary target. So we can have two targets. So now we have the text object and the plane object. Now this could be a normals issue, but just make sure you have negative and positive selected. And we can see that the wrap is working. It's wrapping to our surface there. So, so that I can see just what that one object looks like a little bit better, I'm going to select my text object and my plane object and move them to a new collection. I'll just call that hide for now. Now if I uncheck this, I can just see my text object, and we can see that this is working great. Now, if you want a little bit more resolution, then what you could do is add in that second subdivision surface that I was mentioning before. Now we actually probably want this to go before the shrink wrap modifier so that we get that extra geometry and then it's shrink wrapped. So we're not seeing a great effect there. So what we're going to want to do now is just smooth this out, and I'll use a smooth modifier for that. So we can repeat that a few times. We can also have it smooth it more. Usually it's just kind of a balance between this factor before that starts to happen and the amount of times you're repeating the smooth. We can also right click and shade this smooth. And you can see that we're starting to get that sort of embossed effect. Now, if I wanted to, let's just hide the plane object and just grab my text object, and maybe so that this isn't actually so visible, let's real quick change the visibility in the viewport to be bounds. So now you can see we can simply just move this to sort of create that effect. Now, the higher you get, the more stretching there is. You don't want that. But one other cool thing is to, rather than just have this all reveal at once, I thought it was cool to sort of have it kind of start in the middle and then come out more towards the sides. And the way I did that was by actually adding some simple deform modifiers to this text object. So let's change this back to solid so we can see what it looks like. And I want to just sort of bend it a little bit. And the way I can do that is, again, with a simple deform modifier. So this is the twist option, but I want to use the bend option, and none of these axes are quite right for me. So I'm just going to snap my cursor to this object and then add in, let's actually do this in the center of our scene. I'm going to add in an empty, and we'll just make that a cube, scale down a little bit. And then we can have the origin be this empty object, which now we'll get the effect happening the correct rotation. So just kind of change this until it's doing the right thing. So it looks like maybe this on 90 degrees is going to bend that the way I want, which right now that is what I want. Now we're getting a little bit of stretching geometry and stuff over here. And that's because if we go into this object, some of these objects like the O and the C have a lot of dense geometry, but the M does not. Now one way to get a nice even geometry is actually to add in a remesh to this object first. Now let's put this before the simple deform, and then we also need this to be quite a bit higher resolution. So I'm going to set the voxel size something like a 0.02, and this would depend on your scene scale, but something like that is working for me. Losing a little bit of detail there, maybe we drop it down just a little bit further. Now this can get a little bit intense for your computer depending on how powerful it is, but just use settings that are working for you. Again, you don't have to do this particular bending effect. So this is looking good. I just want to move this on the y-axis a little bit so that that bend is a little bit more even, and something like that looks good. So now we can kind of, throughout the course of our animation, we can sort of have this be bent this way, and we can even add in another simple deform. So let's add one more. We'll also have that be a bend, and we'll select our empty as the bend object. Let's have this bend on maybe the z-axis. So it's kind of going down like that. So let's just actually add in some animation here. So let's say we want this to be maybe 150 frames long, which that would be 5 seconds if you're working at 30 frames per second. And yeah, so let's just kind of figure out where we want this to end. So we obviously want it to end with, we want it to be fully flat. So let's insert a keyframe there by clicking right here. And then we also want this one to be fully flat. So let's insert a keyframe right there. Or maybe this still has a little bend to it, just so we kind of have a nice effect there. So let's insert that keyframe. And then let's also animate the z-axis so that this is kind of coming up into that surface. So yeah, it's going to end. Let's just hide this right now. Okay, so that looks That looks pretty good. Let's insert a keyframe on the Z location right there. And then now where do we want this to start? So we want it to be bent down a little bit so that we're kind of just seeing this groove first. And then maybe it's also bent right here so that the outer edges are bent down. So let's insert keyframes here on frame 1. And then let's just have the whole thing pulled down until it's just barely poking out. I don't want to start with nothing there. I don't want it to be completely flat. So something like that I think will look pretty good. Now let's just uncheck this selection and let's press spacebar to play our animation. And it's playing back a little bit slow, and part of that is due to all these different modifiers. So if you wanted to see a little bit more real time, you could disable a few of those. Just keep in mind that you're going to be seeing a different detail than what's actually going to be rendered. So I think that is looking pretty good. That's basically how you do this effect. I might tweak this a tad, but that's the basic effect. As for the materials and lighting, let's kind of just go over that real quick. I'm going to open up a new tab here. Let's have this be a camera view over here. So I'm going to press Shift C. I'm first going to add an empty, and then I'll use that to control kind of the rotation of my camera. And then I'll add in a camera. So I'll press Alt G to make sure that's in the center, Alt R to make sure it's facing right down. And then let's just parent that to empty, object keep transform, and then bring this up a little bit. And I want this to have a nice long focal length so we're not getting too much perspective, but definitely personal preference here. 150 is going to be good for me. Let's look through our camera, and then I'm going to pull this up a little bit just till we have sort of a nice lockup right there. I think that looks good. And let's think about our camera animation real quickly. So maybe we have it zooming sort of out as we go. Maybe we're a little bit lower and rotate on the Z. So let's have it end right there straight up. So insert those keyframes. And then we've already got one for the location. Let's go to frame 1, the beginning of our animation. Let's have this kind of looking down a little bit. Insert a keyframe. Over a little bit, insert a single keyframe. And let's be zoomed in kind of right on the middle of that, where even the K kind of starts to get revealed. Now, if we press spacebar to play our animation, we sort of, as these letters are being revealed, they're sort of coming into frame, and we have a really nice effect right there. That's looking pretty good. So just control some settings there. If you need to get your playback working better, you could even have this have more subdivision on render time. But with text, keep in mind, if you add more definition here, it's going to shrink wrap it like more tightly, which depending on how smooth you want this look to be, that's just something to be wary of. But this is looking pretty good for me right now. Let's go ahead and enter our rendered view over here. Now make sure you're saving your project. If you haven't, Control S is going to be your hotkey there. And I'm rendering in cycles right now. You could totally do this in Eevee, but yeah, I like cycles. So let's add some lamps to this scene. First of all, our world strength is that plain gray world. I'm just going to turn that off. Let's also turn off our overlays. So you can see in our render view, we have no light happening. So I'm just going to add in a light. That'll be an area light, and place this wherever you want. I'm probably going to put it somewhere maybe like over here, sort of above. And you could change this to be like a rectangle if you wanted, maybe something like that. Just kind of having that point at our text object. Let's bring the power up on that quite a bit. And we can bring the spread down. And maybe we add in one more light, just kind of like over here. Let's actually move this one maybe like right there, and put this light right here. And let's have this one just be let's actually have them both be squares. I've heard that the squares render a little bit faster, but I bet it's pretty negligible in this case. Now the spread is just controlling kind of how sharp that shadow is. So just making some really slight adjustments here. Let's bring the power down on these a little bit, and that's looking pretty good. So you could totally just add in a basic material here, kind of whatever you want. You can make it super shiny if you wanted to make it look kind of liquidy, or yeah, I mean, this isn't a materials tutorial, but you could do all sorts of different things. One thing I thought looked really cool is to turn the subsurface way up and then make the material black and the subsurface color like really dark. That kind of creates like a really cool gel effect. But I also had a really good time working with a leather texture that I had. I think the one I have here is actually one that I downloaded for free from Polygon, so you could probably use that. I had the 8K downloaded, which is what you saw in the intro, but I'll just use the 2K right now just so we get a little bit faster playback. And yeah, that's a nice leather texture. So right off the bat, you can kind of get that sort of premium brand feel. I won't name any brands, but you see this type of thing. So the polygon node, when it comes in, just kind of already has some nice settings here. So I can control the saturation, bring that all the way up, bring the value up maybe a little bit so it's brighter, even bring the brightness up a tad or not. Can make this a little bit shinier or a little bit more rough, depending on the look you're going for, what kind of product this might be for, what the brand is. And then, I could change the hue to maybe be something like a little bit more red, like we saw in the intro. You could also just, you can use any texture here, obviously, but the polygon thing does have a nice little set of sort of pre-made features there. So now if we're kind of scrubbing back on our playhead, we can see that we have that effect. And yeah, so text in Blender 3.6, very awesome. We could make this feel even more premium by like going into our color management settings down here and making it a high contrast look. We could really blast this light a lot more, bring down the spread a little bit, kind of get that real moody effect that you see nowadays. You could change the color of it. We're getting into normal Blender settings, and I wanted this to mostly be just a quick rundown of the new text features, but obviously we got deep into some other stuff, but didn't want to leave you with a features only video. So now you got something that you can actually show your friends, render it out, set a render border, try different materials, different settings, do the simple deform, don't do the simple deform. Try doing this with a whole paragraph. That might get real slow, but yeah, I'm really happy with the new text features that they have in this latest Blender version. So thank you to the developers for that. Just last little thing here, you could do like a depth of field and maybe select your empty object, bring that real low. And then this intro sequence would have a real nice sort of depth of field. That might be too extreme, but play with things like that. You could consider like moving your lighting around, get some interesting effects, animate that. It's all up to you. Excited to see what you come up with though. Please like and subscribe, leave comments, tag me on the gram, the Twitter, the Reddit, wherever you post things. Would love to see what you come up with. And yeah, have fun with these text tools. There's a lot you can do with text. There's a lot of other good tutorials out there, so watch those too. But yeah, sort of cool new text features and a unique way to create an embossed reveal look. So that's all for today. Thanks again. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.